Okay, hey there, I'm Dennis, and we're going to do something a little different again. I realized that I installed MxLinux on my last install, and I pointed out that you could do an encryption, a full disk encryption, and it occurred to me that, hey, you may not know how. So we're going to walk through that. I'm going to install it. Here, I'll pull up a terminal, and I'll show you what we got. By LSBLK, you'll see that I have a SDB right here. That's 465. It says it's 500 gigs, 465 gig hard drive, and it's plugged in. It's a hard drive plugged in enclosure that's plugged into a 3.0 USB port, and that's where I'm going to install MxLinux. But we're going to encrypt the installation as well. So I'm booted into the live environment, and I have OBS set up. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and double click on the installer. It's gathering up information. Hopefully it's gathering up that I have a US keyboard. I do. And it's registered the hard drives. So this is their little welcome screen. It's telling you welcome, come to them for help, or if you want to donate, or if you want to help in any other way, such as we call it transcoding, or not transcoding, interpreting one language to another. So it looks like the installer is ready here. If I can try to make it bigger, if I can get a hold to it there. There we go. All right, so it's got everything right here. I don't need to change the keyboard settings, although you might. We'll hit next. Okay, so right off the bat, I'm going to run the Partition Tool. Now, since we're encrypted, we're going to encrypt. Let me get the right drive first here before I eliminate my host machine's drive. So this is the USB drive that I got in. I'm going to go ahead and say create a partition table. MS-DOS is fine because it's going to be legacy boot, although it will boot into a legacy machine or a UEFI machine. So now, if we're going to encrypt the drive, we're going to require a separate boot drive, MBR drive, that we will not use. But without it, we cannot install it. And I'm going to insert a clip in here that will show you what will happen if you do not create that boot drive. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and create it. And it does not need to be very big. In fact, I'm going to give it a very generous 1 gig, 1024 megabytes on numlock. Keyboard not working. Here we go. 1024. Get this worked out here in a second. So that's a gigabyte. I could probably get away with just giving it 512. But if something ever happens and it needs to update for whatever reason, then I'll have that extra space there. And we're just going to let it format it to ext4, and we're going to call it boot. Although we're not going to use it. So I'm going to click OK, add, go to the free space, select new. All right, so now I'm going to get some swap. 12288, and that's 12 gigabytes of RAM. And this is going to be swap space. Select swap there. See, we can call it, we can even add a label there. So I'm going to click add, or put my mouse on the highlighted spot there and select next or add. And now I'm going to give it essentially 100 gigs of my 500 gig hard drive. We'll say okay, and now we're going to allocate all the rest of this, and this will be home. Did I label that other one? I did not. It'll let me rename it. Nope. Rename, size, move, format. Damn it. But I can do it now. That's 102400. That's going to be root. All right. Get the rest of it and select new. Leave it all the same, except we're going to type in home. And okay, so it gives us a fake boot drive, a swap drive, and a root and a home. So 4 partitions. So let's find the check button and select OK and hit apply. All right. Now the little blue light's going crazy on the hard drive because it's working it. I knew you needed a master boot or needed a boot partition when you set this up in encrypted drive in Arch, but I didn't realize that you needed it in MX as well. In MX as well. I do now. Okay, so that's finished. We got a fake boot drive, a swap partition, 12 gigabytes, root, and home. And we'll apply it, and we're going to say OK. Now the installer is picking up what I just laid down. It's loaded SDB here. I won't be able to change that, but I'm going to say custom install on existing partitions. Click next. Okay, so my root partition is going to be SDB3. SDB3 right there. My home partition is going to be SDB4 right there. So we got SDB3 is root, SDB4 is home. All right, swap. That should be SDB1 or 2. I'm sorry, 1. There it is. And boot will be SDB1. There it is there. Now, like I said, if we had not created that drive right there, this process will fail, and I'm going to insert that clip probably right here. Okay, so here we go. I've set up my partitions, but I did not create a boot partition. And I knew that you needed a boot partition when you encrypt your drives in Arch Linux. However, I did not realize it here. If you try to get through this and encrypt your root drive, you're going to have a partition set aside just for your root drive or boot partition. You'll see it here in a second. But if you don't have it, you'll get this message right here. You must choose a separate boot partition when encrypting a root drive. Okay, so I'm back. I've selected all my drives here, and I'm going to select encrypt, encrypt, encrypt. So I've encrypted my root drive, I've encrypted my home drive, and the swap. Now, I'm not preserving my data from home because I'm not upgrading. The next selection is check for bad blocks, which is like running a scan disk, which I don't need to do because the Gparted would have picked something up when I looked at it a while ago. All right, so now I need a password. All right, so I've typed that in twice. Now here you could do some advanced encryption, and you can also read right here what you're doing. Now this is not a complete. This won't tell you everything you need to know. It gives you a pretty good guideline of what to do. It's telling you there about the checking for bad blocks. Encryption is possible via LUX. A password is required, which we just done. And we could check the advanced settings. Now, if you're into here, it's because you know what you're doing. And either way, once you get into here, you can still read everything. All of these options you can read about. It's incredible the notes that they've got here for you. But I don't need to change any of this. I'm happy with all of the encryption. So I'm going back. All right, so I've got SDB3 is my root drive, 100 gigs. SDB4 is my home drive. It's 352 plus gigs. A swap, SDB2, and I got a boot, which won't be used. You'll see when we're finished here. All right, and I'm encrypting the root, home, and the swap. Next. All right, so now it's telling me it's going to destroy my data. Be sure I want to do it because you can't reverse this. So I'm going to say yep. And now the process is started. Now, if I was doing a UEFI install, this would have highlighted the ESP here. Now it's asking me where do I want to install my system boot disk. Well, I don't want to put it on my host machine. I want to be careful here, and I want to put it on the SDB, which is the drive that we partitioned and are installing MX on. And that's where I want my bootloader to go, grub. All right, so it's waiting on me to make that selection, and I did, so I'm going to say next. You be really careful right there. If you make a mistake right here, you stand a chance of messing up your host machine and the installation. So anyway, I got SDB. I know that's what we're installing on. I'm going to say next. All right, now it's asking for a host name. Capital DH is perfect for me. And I'm going to leave Samba because you never know. I might have to connect with a Microsoft printer or something. You may not use it. You don't know. This is a portable drive, so I could be plugging it into anywhere. So I'm going to leave that enabled. Tells you a little bit about Samba here. I'm going to say next. All right, so United States, American English, America. We're going to change the New York to Chicago because that's in the Central Time Zone. And I like the 12-hour clock. Now, you can click this, and if you're installing this on a low-spec machine, you can go through here. These are the options that are going to start right off the bat, like Bluetooth's going to start, RSync's going to start, printing's going to start. There's a cron job, time-based job scheduler, it's going to start. All of these services are going to start, and you don't need them all. So you can take a bunch of these out. Possibly, I don't think I would take out the dbus. But, be careful. Take out what you want. You want to make sure sudo is going to run. But you can take those out to reduce the load on your machine. That is, if you have an older machine. All right, click next. Now it's going to ask me for my username. And my name has not really changed. I believe I know mine. All right, so now I've got a user with a password verified, a root password verified, and I could select auto login. But what would be the sense in encrypting a drive if I selected auto login? But here's one of the most important factors to me here is save live desktop changes. That's why I went ahead and made these changes. I see clip it finally stopped. Quit running. So I'm going to save the live desktop changes, and in theory it should save all the changes that I made to the start menu, the taskbar, some of the double click options. All right, so I'm going to say next. And we're waiting on it now. Doesn't take long. It doesn't take long at all. It's taking a little longer because we are doing the encryption. When you boot up to this encrypted MxLinux, before you get to your login screen, you will be presented with a root login screen, if you will, where you'll be required to enter that encrypted password. And you can't get further than that until you do. But once you do that, then the entire process starts up normally, with the exception that it is encrypted. And it does take a little longer because it is encrypted. However, once you get into your system, I couldn't tell any difference. I haven't been able to tell any difference. All right, working on it. Like I said, it's taking a little longer than ordinary because it is on a USB drive. That's the bottleneck, the USB. And it's being encrypted. Now we're installing Grub. So it's about through. Without you, there would be no MxLinux. Without MxLinux, they would be us, but we wouldn't have such a good operating system. I declare I like MxLinux. Personally, I think it's the best distribution that I've personally tried. The only exception to that is Arch, and the Arch is because I built it. I know what's on it. Alright, we're not going to automatically reboot, but I am going to shut down or finish, and I'm going to save. I'll have to save this, and I'll see you when I boot into the system. Alright. Okay, so I've taken my external hard drive and I've plugged it into a machine that is booting up UEFI. Now remember, this my drive I set up to run in legacy mode. That's where I set it up in, is legacy. It's don't have a UEFI boot or anything. So, and I said it will boot up into UEFI, and it did. I was frantically hitting F12. No, I wouldn't. But you can see here's my options. I got into my boot menu, and I'm going to select my USB storage device. Mainly showing you this because I want you to see the first boot screen where you log into. The machine that it's booting up on has MxLinux installed on it. The USB drive that I'm booting into is MxLinux, but it's encrypted, and I wanted you to see this scene, this screen right here. It's your login screen. It's asking you for your encrypted password. Alright, so I'm going to have to lay the phone down here. Okay, so I've given it my password. I'm going to hit enter. And from this point on, it's going to be a regular boot, but I'll let you see it. At the top there, it says Crypt Setup, root FS, root file system, set up successfully. That's telling me that the encryption has been set up. It's booting into the system now. It's opened it up so that we can boot into it. And like I said, from this point on, it's going to be basically normal. You won't see any real difference. As soon as that comes up, I'm going to turn the recording off, and when I come back, it'll be because I'm recording on my USB drive. All right. Okay, so hopefully I got it worked out here. I've booted into my MxLinux. It's on a external storage drive, a little 2.5-inch hard drive, laptop size. Put in a little enclosure, encrypted installed of MxLinux on it. It was set up in a legacy environment. Right now, I'm booted into my machine that has UEFI enabled. So you can boot into UEFI even though you built it on a legacy machine. I've gotten everything to work. Now, the tweaks and stuff changed a little bit, and they probably wouldn't have changed if I would have booted into a legacy machine. However, I booted into UEFI. Some of the OBS settings had changed. In fact, the microphones, everything that I had set up before, I had to be redone again. The webcam and the microphones, they were all there. They just had to be activated, and the right path had to be given to OBS. I even got all my settings still saved. Pretty nice, pretty nice. So I've got everything in here. I've been editing in Kdenlive. Let's see what version this is. I forgot to look. It is a little slow though, but we're on a USB drive, so it's bottlenecked by that USB regardless of how fast the drive might be. And you can also tell that I'm in a VGA environment. Version 1908-01. And it's set up 1080p, 29.97 foot per second. And I think that's what I got my OBS set up. I think. Okay, well that ought to do it for this video. I've encrypted everything. I showed you the encryption scene or encryption login that you have to put in your encrypted password in order to get into your system. At that point, then you're going to boot into LightDM. Now you could auto log in and it would just go straight into your system, but this is just one step more of protection that you offer yourself. Now, one thing you need to be aware of is, just say you built this system and you was using it, you took it over somewhere and you borrowed a laptop or something that you knew somebody or whatever, you ended up losing the thing somehow. Whatever the circumstance was, you end up losing it. Well, if somebody did find it and decided to just keep it, they would not be able to log in to your drive unless they know both passwords, your encrypted root password or your root password for your system. However, they can plug it in and just wipe the data out, and you'll lose your drive. They won't be able to read your drive if it's a good encryption, and this is a pretty standard encryption that MX offers. The point is, it was very, very simple. It was easy to encrypt, just a couple clicks of the button, and made sure you had a master boot or a boot partition. Basically useless, but it has to have it, and that's fine. That's how MX set it up. You have to have that on an Arch encryption. So regardless, MX works. Okay, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. All right then, bye.